Mira tightened her grip on the steering wheel, trying to stay calm in the freezing night. The road was empty, stretching endlessly under a blanket of snow. Suddenly, she froze. In the beam of her headlights, a dark figure stood motionless among the trees. A German shepherd, its fur covered in snow, was tied tightly to a tree. Its breasts were weak, eyes dull, almost lifeless. Who could be this cruel? Without a second thought, Mira slammed the brakes and jumped out of the car. The icy wind bit into her skin, but she didn't care. She had to save it. Mira sprinted forward, her heart pounding in her chest. The icy wind slashed at her face, numbing her skin, but she didn't care. The dog lay curled up in the snow, its thick fur now frozen stiff. It didn't even have the strength to shiver anymore. Too weak, too cold. She dropped to her knees, her trembling hands brushing against its ice-crusted coat. Still breathing, she let out a shaky breath, but it did nothing to ease the fear tightening around her chest. If she didn't save it now, it wouldn't make it. Mira grabbed the rope around its neck. No movement. She tugged harder, but it was frozen solid against the tree, like a chain of ice locking the poor animal in place. Beneath the rope, its skin was raw and bloody, the wounds swollen from the bitter cold. Mira gritted her teeth and yanked again. Nothing. Panic set in. She glanced around. Nothing but snow and darkness. She needed something to cut the rope. A knife? Scissors? Nothing. Her fingers fumbled inside her coat pocket. Her car key. No other choice. She jammed the key's edge into the frozen knot, prying at the ice, trying to rip it apart bit by bit. Her bare fingers burned, the cold stabbing so deep it felt like fire. But she didn't stop. The dog let out a weak whimper, its body twitching. "No, don't give up," Mira pleaded silently, gripping the key tighter, working faster. Crack! The rope suddenly snapped. Mira jerked back, her heart skipping a beat. But before relief could settle in, the dog collapsed into the snow, motionless. Mira froze. No. She tossed the key aside and dropped to her knees, her shaking hands lifting the dog's head. No movement. Its breaths were so faint, barely there. No, no, no. Was she too late? "Hey, don't do this to me! Stay with me!" She nearly screamed, but the dog remained still, its eyelashes frozen over, its fur stiff as stone. Panic surged through her. She yanked off her coat and wrapped it tightly around the frail body, desperate to share what little warmth she had left. But it was too cold, too late, no time to think. Mira scooped the dog into her arms, the freezing weight cutting straight through her thin shirt. It was too light. A healthy German shepherd should be at least 70 pounds, but this one, just skin and bones. Her breath came in ragged gasps as she staggered toward the car. Every second slipping away felt like a death sentence. She slammed her elbow against the car door, yanked it open, and laid the dog on the passenger seat, her hands never letting go of its freezing body. Grabbing the keys, she twisted hard, engine roaring to life. Foot to the floor. The tires skidded on the ice before gripping the road. Then she was flying through the blizzard. Heat blasted from the vents, but not enough. Mira pulled her coat tighter around the dog, rubbing its back, its legs, its chest. Harder, faster. She pressed her hands over its ribcage, praying to feel something. Nothing. No. Wait. Mira held her breath, a faint movement beneath her palm. A fragile breath, a weak, struggling heartbeat. "That's it. Come on, buddy, don't give up," she yelled, gripping the wheel with one hand while holding the dog close, her warmth pressing against its frozen body. Then, a soft whimper. The dog shivered. Mira's heart nearly burst. It was alive, but the storm wasn't letting up. Snow swallowed the road, visibility down to mere feet. She clenched her jaw, pushed the gas harder. Headlights flashed. A massive truck was barreling straight toward her. Mira's heart clenched as the truck's headlights tore through the darkness, charging straight at her like a raging beast. Too fast. Too close. Damn it! She yanked the wheel hard to the right. Tires screeched against the ice, and the car fishtailed violently. She clutched the dog tightly, shielding it from the jarring impact as the vehicle spun out of control. Snow sprayed everywhere, the world blurring into chaos, until finally the car skidded to a stop at the edge of the forest. Her heart pounded like a drum. Her breath came in ragged gasps. That was too close. She whipped her head toward the dog, still breathing, weak but alive. She bit down on her lip. No time to waste. Slamming her foot on the gas, she sped toward the nearest vet clinic. Minutes later, she burst through their emergency doors, shouting, "I need help!" Veterinarians rushed over, lifting the dog onto a table, checking its vitals. Mira stood frozen, watching, her pulse racing. And then, one of the doctors suddenly stiffened. "We found a microchip." Mira's breath hitched. A microchip? That meant the dog had an owner. A vet scanned the chip, eyes flicking to the screen, before turning toward Mira, tension tightening his face. The owner is from this town. A cold wave crashed over her. Number if it had an owner, why was it abandoned in a snowstorm? But the shock wasn't over. The vet's face darkened as he met her eyes. "And the owner is someone you know." Mira froze. A chill ran down her spine, not from the cold, but from the doctor's words. "Someone you know?" She swallowed hard, her voice barely a whisper. "Who?" The doctor glanced at the computer screen, then back at her, his expression heavy. "Daniel Foster." Daniel Foster? Number that couldn't be right. Mira stumbled back a step. Daniel was a respected businessman, always putting on a kind, charitable front. He donated to local causes, shook hands at fundraisers. She had even met him at one. This didn't make sense, but the truth was right in front of her. Daniel never reported his dog missing. He didn't lose it. He left it to die in the freezing cold. Mira's jaw tightened, fists clenching at her sides. She turned to the doctor. "We need to call the police." He nodded. "I already did." Mira looked down at the dog lying on the exam table. It was still breathing, weak but fighting. It wasn't Daniel Foster's dog anymore. She reached out, gently placing her hand on its head. "You're never going back to him." Her voice wavered, but there was no doubt in it. "You have a new home, with me." The dog's eyes fluttered open, and for the first time a small spark of life returned. Then ever so slightly its tail moved. Mira let out a breath, a tear slipping down her cheek. They had won. Mira sat beside the dog, her hand gently running over its fur, still cold to the touch. For the first time it didn't flinch in fear. It had been through the worst kind of nightmare, but now it wasn't alone anymore. She let out a slow breath, her eyes stinging. How many dogs out there had been abandoned just like this one? How many innocent lives were thrown away simply because people were too cruel to care? The dog shifted slightly, resting its head against her hand. Mira's chest tightened. It had every reason to give up on humans, but somehow it was still willing to trust one more time. She leaned in and whispered, "You're not just it anymore. You're Rex." Rex, a fighter, a survivor, a friend. And this time Rex's tail wagged, stronger. Mira smiled, but the tears still fell. Not from sadness, but from hope. She couldn't change the whole world, but she could change Rex's world. And maybe you could do the same for someone out there. What do you think about Rex's story? Share your thoughts in the comments. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to help spread messages of kindness and second chances. Because somewhere out there, another Rex is still waiting for a miracle.